Today I'm going to be learning about Norwegian history and in particular Norwegian military history by looking at Norway in World War II. This is Norway's World War II Paperclip Resistance. So yeah, Norway during World War II is not something I know too much about, so interested to learn. Being British, when we learn about World War II at school, it's mostly from a British point of view, the British military and so on, but interested to learn about Norway in this time period, so you can tell me what you know. If there's any other good videos detailing what happened in Norway during World War II, please recommend them as well. Let's watch this one.
When Nazi Germany began its occupation of Norway in 1940, a spirited resistance arose. Some of this was armed resistance, engaging in sabotage and raiding, spying on behalf of the Allies or aiding Allied spies, but much of it was social resistance by the Norwegian people, often at great risk to themselves in a country where the leader, the occupation leader's name, Quisling, literally became a synonym for Nazi collaboration. Some of that resistance came from Norway's teachers, who simply refused to abide by the rules set by the Nazi government. It is history that deserves to be remembered.
Yeah, again, like that's not something I knew about. So when I've heard stories about World War II, whether it's conflicts or things like this is quite different, man. So I'm really looking forward to seeing this again. Like, tell me how what you learned about World War II, about Norway's role in that war, if you know about this story in particular.
On April 9th, 1940, Germany launched a full-scale invasion of Norway in Operation Weser exercise. Germany occupied Denmark on the same day. Norway's neutrality had always been fragile, as Germany imported Swedish iron through Norwegian ports, and the English prepared to mine the trade routes. In fact, England had even considered sending troops to seize Swedish iron fields in 1939, with both sides fearing the other would strike. It was only a matter of time when one or the other actually would. The German invasion moved quickly, seizing key cities and air bases in a series of surprise attacks. While it would take several months to fully occupy the country, resistance in southern Norway ended by May 1st, and the Norwegian royal family and government was evacuated to London. The Norwegian army finally capitulated on June 10th. In the immediate aftermath of the invasion, the leader of Norway's fascist party, Vidkun Quisling, had attempted a coup. Although he had been in contact with Hitler, Quisling acted on his own volition when he entered the Norwegian Broadcasting Corporation studios in Oslo on April 9th. He issued a nationwide broadcast that evening, declaring himself Prime Minister and ordering resistance to stop. The Germans decided to support Quisling, demanding that Haakon appoint Quisling Prime Minister, but King Haakon refused, instead telling the German ambassador that he would abdicate before he would appoint Quisling.
I mean, that's just like strong leadership as well, man. Like, that's quite incredible to see. Yeah, again, like this whole situation, I had no idea like this fascist party leader was trying to just install himself as prime minister.
Quisling's party was unable to garner enough support, so the Germans pushed him aside in favor of an administrative council and then an occupation government under Josef Terboven. Quiet resistance to the Nazi regime soon appeared. Norwegians tried to maintain an ice front, refusing to mingle or speak with German officers. Many Norwegians refused to sit next to a German on the ubiquitous trolleys, an act that was so annoying to the occupiers that the Germans announced that it was forbidden to stand on a trolley if seats were available. Students at Oslo University began to wear paperclips on their lapels as a symbol of resistance, denoting solidarity in the concept that we are bound together. The H7 symbol of King Haakon was also widely utilized as a symbol of resistance. Among the first things the new regime did was target education. A document from the Church of Education Department circulated in August of 1940, instructing teachers to proceed with caution, talking about social and political topics, and not to discuss the situation as it stands. Any discussion about history should stop at the beginning of 1939. Quisling ally Ragnar Skanke was appointed Secretary of Education, and he ordered all teachers to sign a loyalty pledge to the new state on October 4th, 1940. Many teachers refused to sign. According to one teacher, they responded by declaring our commitment to our vocation and our conscience. The teachers en masse refused to attend Quisling's party meetings in 1941. Skanke continued to pressure the teachers, taking over hiring and forcing prospective teachers to sign the loyalty pledge. He attempted to force students to attend a Hitler Youth exhibition, but resistance from parents, teachers, and students forced him to revoke the order. Resistance continued to solidify. The teachers spread 4 points of resistance. 1, to reject demands for membership in the fascist party. 2, to reject any attempt to bring propaganda into the schools. 3, to reject orders from non-competent people. And 4, to reject any participation in the Nazi youth organization. Quisling never gave up his crusade to take control of Norway, and he was put in charge of a collaborationist government on February 20th, 1942, although de facto power remained with the Reich Commissariat of Norway under Terboven. As minister-president, Quisling assumed the authority of both the king and parliament, although the German occupation government remained in place. He thought that the appointment was a decisive step on the road towards the complete independence of Norway. He hoped to eventually lead an independent Norway in alliance with Germany instead of an occupied state. Among his first actions, Quisling dissolved the existing teachers' union and ordered all of the country's 14,000 teachers to join a new union, which would require them to teach Nazi material. Teachers were required to join the union or be fired. Simultaneously, he required all children to join the Norwegian equivalent of the Nazi youth. Hundreds of thousands of letters of protest poured in, and ultimately 12,000 of the 14,000 teachers refused to join the new union.
Oh man, Norwegian teachers at this time, that's just, again, incredible bravery to actually put themselves out like that and make these very strong decisions, just really resistance. And again, I had no idea about this. These are really the sort of stories people in other countries should be learning about. It's quite amazing, quite heroic from those teachers. Tell me again, if you know about this, if this is still something teachers in Norway today would teach students.
On February 27th, the government shuttered the schools, citing the fuel situation, while denying the teachers pay. Parents complained to the government, while some teachers continued to teach in private. Losing patience and failing to convince the teachers to join his union, Quisling ordered 1,100 teachers, all men, arrested on March 20th, 1942, close to 10% of the country's teachers, and imprisoned them in concentration camps. The state continued to pressure the teachers to join the union. According to one account, the teachers were all paraded outside the barracks. The first man to be called to sign the statement of apology was a sickly, rather elderly man. Minutes passed, and then he came out looking a new man. He clenched his fist and shouted, "I bloody well won't sign." Another teacher remembered someone asking, "Do you think we will be shot if we do not join the union?" He recalled one of his colleagues answering, "I cannot call myself a brave man, but how can I look my 15-year-old daughter in the eye when she asks, 'What did you do to help?'" Finally, the Nazis sent 499 of the teachers to the extreme north of the country to a camp above the Arctic Circle called Kirkenes. A further 147 teachers would arrive later. On their journey to Trondheim by train, hundreds of Norwegians gathered, singing and offering food and clothing. On April 15th, the teachers were shoved aboard a steamer meant for 250. The journey was terrible, one teacher remembered. People were packed together in a confined space. Food was scarce. One loaf of bread was meant to feed 5 men for one day. German doctors reported some of the teachers may not survive the journey, but Quisling sent them anyway. Life at Kirkenes was difficult. On starvation rations, the teachers were put to work and lived in a dirty stable full of mice. Some teachers gave in and signed, but the majority remained obstinate. One, Olav Hole, died, apparently in an accident. The teachers were forced to build roads and other manual labor. "We have to remember the great task we are accomplishing here," teacher Edward Brockstad wrote. "Many prisoners have suffered more than we do, and soldiers on the fronts in many ways are worse off than we. Our lives are not more valuable than theirs. There are so many who have made greater sacrifices in this horrible war."
Oh man, that's the mentality, that's quite unbelievable, the humility, but yeah, whoa. These are some of the most heroic people from the war, man. Really quite crazy, man. It's just so terrible what happened, but to hear the bravery of these people, it's very inspiring.
The teachers' resistance paid the imprisoned teachers salaries to support their families in an effort to alleviate the men's difficulties, and the prisoners were able to make contact with locals who smuggled them food. One German guard was said to have helped the teachers make beds of hay to improve their conditions. Teachers' resistance members had to be cautious as the Gestapo sought to end resistance of any kind. Numerous resistance members fled to Sweden. A pregnant woman who was arrested remembered that a German doctor told her captors to beat me while I was in the sitting position. Otherwise, I was more liable to faint and they wouldn't get anything out of me. They beat her, hoping she knew where the Teachers' Resistance or home front headquarters were, but she didn't know either. She remained in prison for the rest of the war. Resistance to the Union remained extremely widespread. Some 200 teachers who joined the Union after being told the rest of the teachers had acquiesced returned home only to immediately leave the Union and return to resistance. Einar Holger, secretary of the school's Council for Secondary Education, used his position to advise the teachers of German activities, but was finally arrested on October 23, 1943. Rather than face torture and give up his fellow teachers, he committed suicide. After months, the teachers' resistance leaders advised the incarcerated teachers to accept the German demands and sign, as they feared the teachers would not survive the coming winter. The fight will continue in the classroom, the resistance promised. Quisling was determined to break the teachers' resistance, and he began compiling lists of teachers to arrest or deport. His efforts, however, were beginning to have more important impacts, and Terboven intervened. Quisling's failure was embarrassing to the Reich and provided fertile propaganda for the Norwegian government in exile. It was especially embarrassing because racially the Nazis saw Scandinavia as kindred, and the civilian population was protesting vociferously against Quisling's actions. Terboven prevented Quisling from closing the schools, which officially ended his efforts to bring Nazism to the schools. By November, all of the teachers imprisoned at Kirkenes had been released. While Quisling continued to target teachers until the end of the war, his larger efforts were over. In a speech in May of 1942, Quisling said, "You teachers have ruined everything for me." It wasn't just the teachers who were
So like petty, even his response is so childish, man. Like what he's trying to do to these teachers is just absolutely evil. Again, is Quisling still known in Norway? Do people learn about his exploits?
It wasn't just the teachers who resisted. Lawyers, judges, doctors, clergy, and even sporting organizations also refused orders from Quisling and the German occupation government. When the war finally ended, Quisling and his government surrendered. Resistance to the Axis in the Second World War took many forms, often arguably more dramatic than the Paperclip Resistance, but historian and British intelligence officer M.R.D. Foote argued that the teachers' resistance was as striking an example in its own quiet way of what a resistance can do as was the famous Wehrmacht raid, which destroyed the Norsk heavy water plant.
Yeah, for sure. Like that's like I've heard of like resistance movements as in like fighting with guns, fighting back, but to see like just the strength of their convictions from these teachers, and again like the other occupations there, lawyers and so on, just the Norwegian people in general, just so strong at that time. So like you see what happened to those teachers, like being taken off to these hellish camps. But the Norwegian people were just so strong in their beliefs, man. It's like amazing.
The British Secretary of State for Foreign Affairs, Anthony Eden, specifically called out the Norwegian teachers in 1942, saying, "I wish to pay a special tribute to the Norwegian teachers. There is nothing more hateful to the Nazi," he argued, "than a system of free education for its own sake." He continued, "This is a symbol of the fight of a free people against a hateful oppressor. The triumph of the spirit of man against brute force." I hope you enjoyed watching this episode of the...
Very like informative, insightful. Go subscribe to that channel. I'll put a link to the video in the description. Like really informative, like concise, very well told, man. And well, that's like very eye-opening to learn about that, like the strength of these teachers. Like such a inspirational story. Definitely what people should be learning about as much as they should learn about the battles and so on of World War II. Like stories like this, that resistance, well, it's amazing. So tell me if you knew about that. If there's any other good stories from World War II in Norway, please recommend them as well, and I'll try and watch them and learn about that as well. Thanks.